95% of 885 surveyed VC investors name founders and team as an essential investment factor. They even estimate that it is the most significant factor for an investment decision at 47%, long before strategic fit, product, business model, or even valuation. But what happens then if founders quit?
Good question.
Would that put investor money at risk, or is it counterintuitively good news? Are investors truthful when they say they invest in founders, or would they somewhat show them the door? What happens to companies that lose their founders, and what's the best predictor of their leaving? Is it dilution, growth, founder's profile itself, company struggles, hires, milestones, or board appointments? Well, studying 1,571 companies and their 3,356 founders identified 16 patterns classified in 5 buckets, 3 red flags that almost predict failure, a bunch of smaller hints, and a formula that almost applies to 83% of the founder's departure. Let's start with that. Here's the sequence of events that I found all across the board.
Okay, let's go.
First, a board member gets appointed, then within the next 6 months, a COO and/or CFO gets hired. Within the 6 months after that, the founding CEO hands off his role, usually to become CTO, and then within the next year, a new growth round closes, followed by a silent founder exit, usually 7 to 8 years post-founding, while the company has 80 full-time employees. 55% of the founder exits identified follow those exact 5 steps. An additional 22% skip the COO step and go straight to the CEO swap, and a final 6% raise first, then reshuffle, that often being an emergency bridge round.
We've got to have money.
Actually, when I started that investigation, I expected the COO/CFO hire to be the strongest predictor of a founder stepping down and ultimately leaving the company, but it turns out it is only the 4th strongest predictor, with a 59% chance it triggers that said exit. But before I reveal the other 3, I need to present all the contenders, split across 5 categories: fundraising events, founder's profile, team development, board structure, and finally, market events. And I need to raise the stakes as well, because I hear you.
How's that possible?
I have a special connection to my subscribers.
Why are you begging like this?
Because I really want to cross that 2,000 subscribers bar.
Aren't you ashamed of yourself?
Not at all, but back on track, let me up the ante with that. I identified 3 direct correlations between a founder quitting and the company failing. Starting with number 3, 58% of the companies that fail in the end swap their founding CEO before their Series A. It might be a good idea down the line to change a company's head, as we'll see later, but doing so too early might doom you. Then in number 2, we have the absence of the founders on both the board and the CTO role at the same time, which is present in 64% of my documented failures, meaning between the lines that you can move your founder to the CTO spot, or move the founders to the board, but doing neither nor is probably a terrible idea. And finally, the number 1 founder to failure correlation is when 2 founders or more exit within the same up to 24 months window while the company is still in growth mode with headcount on the rise, which is a scenario that's present in 72% of my investigated failures. That one may sound oddly specific, but you'll see in a minute that this case can be quite common. So now you know the sequence of events that leads to a founder departure and how harmful it can be to companies to lose their founder. But before I jump into my 16 patterns, one word on my methodology. First, where do my 1,571 companies come from? Well, those would be all the water companies that fulfill at least one of the 2 following criterion, having raised equity funding since the year 2000 and/or having been founded since that same year 2000. Why 2000? Well, on the one hand, because it's an elegant divide to focus on the 21st century. On the other hand, because I had to build on events that were documented on the internet, which wasn't that prevalent in the 80s or the 60s, right?
No, it's a different kind of fun.
So I built my list of companies by cross-checking Global Water Intelligence, Crunchbase, and LinkedIn, on top of my pre-existing dataset of companies that raised growth stage money since 2018. Then, as I revealed in my newsletter last week, I just finalized the new version of my retrieved augmented generation tool dedicated to water tech. On search for it, it's only available to me as of now, and I used that one to populate a huge database looking into who founded the companies and when, how much they raised and when, if the founders changed role, for what role, and again, when, if the company was independent, alive, its revenue, its valuation, all the changes that happened to its board, the profile of the people on the board, and you would have guessed, when they got appointed, all the changes that happened to the C-suite, the evolution of the employees count, and the categorized milestones the company achieved. This has been a background activity for me for the past year. I mean, me and the team, of course. Anyone? Yes. It's only me. And it intensified over the last weeks, which led me to burn quite some money on APIs like Perplexity or Anthropic, also because I did a bunch of mistakes, and that wouldn't have been possible without the support of my sponsors, Bluefoot Membranes and Simple Lab. So here's a quick thanks to Simple Lab. If you're in the water industry, Simple Lab has you covered. Simple Lab is your one-stop shop for certified laboratory testing kits, from routine lead sampling to walk-ins and specialized analyses like microplastics, PFAS, and rats. Order the testing you want online, choose from hundreds of accredited commercial labs, get free round-trip shipping both ways, and by the way, if you have your own lab and just want help with kitting and logistics, Simple Lab can do that for you too. No more coordinating labs, chasing shipments, or wrangling EDDs, just streamlined ordering, clear results, and real support when you need it. It's lab testing simplified. Head to gosimplelab.com, it's the first link in the description. Choose your test and they'll take care of the rest. Thanks again, Simple Lab, and let's head to my findings. First, one overall number for you to get a sense of what's at play here. 37% of the companies will see at least one founder leave the company. If we further dig into my founder category to get a bit more patterns at play there, the average founding team has a bit more than 2 heads, with 24% of solo founders and 30% of founding teams having 4 heads or more.
How much?
Yes, I know, it surprised me as well, but that's a trend in the earlier ages of my dataset, much less in recent times, as since 2015, only 8% of the founding teams have 4 or more founders on it. When it comes to how that influences a potential exit, quite logically, the larger the founding squad, the more probably it gets that someone jumps ship. Solo founders quit 27% of the time, which rises to a 40% chance that at least 1 out of a 2-head founding team leaves, 69% for 3 founders, and 89% for 4. Above that, the sample is no longer representative. In terms of timing, there's a window for leaving the company, as 70% of the people leaving go between 5 and 10 years post-founding, with a mean tenure of 7.6 years, and 75% of the exits happening before the company is 9.3 years old. It hence seems like fatigue plus dilution play quite a substantial role in that event, but actually not substantial enough to make it to my top 3 drivers of a founder exit. I also funnily noted an interesting geographical divide between regions, with founders staying the longest in LATAM and the shortest in Middle East, North America and Europe being in the middle. But in summary of that founders section, even though the naturally expected trend to lose founders over time verifies, there's not enough of a sudden jump for it to be a predictor anywhere on the churn curve, so we will have to look elsewhere to get a stronger predictor of a founder flying to new endeavors. Hence, let's look at another intuitive category, fundraising events. And yes, those have an influence on founders' fate. In a year where the company raises money, the odds of a founder leaving actually are up by 10 percentage points. Overall, the successive rounds are almost linear in terms of impact. The more diluted they get, the more likely it is that founders go to something else. For instance, 51% of the companies raising 5 rounds or more will see their entire founding team waving from the haven while the company's ship sails to new endeavors. But again, that sounds rather like a natural churn than a sudden cliff, and we don't have a top 3 predictor here either for a founder's departure. There are 2 more interesting patterns though in that fundraising section, 2 that behave a bit like chicken and egg. I'll let you decide which one triggers the other. When a founder leaves, the company raises more per round. That one may sound harsh, I know. Indeed, the median capital raised goes up to $6.3 million when a founder quits versus $5 million when he stays. So in that first chicken or egg, it seems like bigger checks usually come with bring a grown-up conditions. But the other side of that same coin is that subsectors with the highest capex needs, so the ones revolving around hardware, show show the steepest founder churn, with 8 percentage points higher figures than software or digital water solutions. Bigger checks apparently trigger tougher governance and faster CEO swaps. Where I see a chicken and egg situation is that the median cap raised going up when a founder quits could be because it's hardware, but it could also be that hardware leads to higher churn because it implies higher capital needs. I let you decide, and I'd crave to have your opinion in the comments. For now, as we're still looking for our top 3, let's tap into our next category with the market events. You know how much I value Paulo Callan's work and his book, The Dynamics of Water Innovation.
God, that one again?
Yes, sorry, I even did a full book club episode on his findings, and if I'm honest, I expected the slowness of the market adoption to be the first driver of founder exhaustion, and hence the reason they'd leave the company they started.
But you were wrong.
Indeed. Thanks for pointing out, I guess. If anything, the slowness of the market rather keeps founders on board. A first significant pilot almost has zero influence on the natural founder churn, while a first full-scale plant reduces the chances of the founder leaving by roughly 5 percentage points. My understanding here is that it's so goddamn hard to get a first commercial reference with a new water tech that once you made it, you'd rather stay on board to see that repeating and to see your brainchild make it in real life than jump ship and pack when you're probably needed to assist with commissioning and troubleshooting. Another interesting finding here is that partnerships also reduce founder churn, and even reduce it more as it decreases the odds of departure by 8 percentage points, which again makes me believe that something about commercialization pushes founders out, as when they can somewhat skip that step and delegate it to a partner to double down on their technological love, they happily do so and stay on board. Some might do it with the internal reshuffle I touched on in the beginning as the CEO becomes the CTO. Some others will do that externally through partnerships. Finally, though, one market milestone still accelerates founder exit. It's the first major reference customer, which ups the churn probability by 6 percentage points. Again, the way I understand that is that this is an inflection point from which you will standardize your offering and repeat, which I would deem probably less interesting for tech lover entrepreneurs that may already have a new idea in mind. But overall, yet again, in this third category, no top 3 predictor of a founder leaving. It's almost as if I was doing that on purpose to keep my watch time up, right?
Almost.
But don't worry, we finally have a predictor in my next category, team development. Actually, we'll find in this category 2 events that we already covered, the founder sliding from CEO to the CTO role or to chairman of the board, which usually happens within 18 months of the Series A and is seen in 55% of all founder departures, and the COO or CFO as first outside C-suite hire, which is our 4th best predictor with a 59% occurrence. But beyond those 2, I asked myself, is there a critical team size upon which a founder leaves? After all, it's not all the same job to drive a team of founders as it is to manage a large crew of employees. And for once, that intuition is not fully wrong.
Yeah, I'll take that as a win.
Large teams will somewhat trigger founder exit. But unfortunately, for the beauty of the exercise, there's no magical number for what large means. 50 full-time employee has literally zero impact. It's not moving the needle at all compared to the natural aging churn. And by 100 FTEs, founders are out on average since 1.7 years. So it isn't that either, and the average size at which the founders quit is around 80 full-time employees. It's disappointing, I know. But if it's not one actual specific size, there is a team indicator that's a strong predictor of a founder calling it quits, and that's hiring velocity. When hiring becomes faster than 1 new employee per quarter, specifically more than 4.3 full-time employees per year, the exit probability nearly doubles, which makes it the second strongest predictor for a founder leaving, as this step will occur in 82% of the path of companies with founder exits. I believe that the explanation here is quite straightforward. When companies start growing fast and scaling, we're again in the same case as in the previous section and its first major reference customer. It becomes more about executing and standardizing than about building from scratch and doing things that don't scale. So you see, the team's shape and velocity are very strong predictors of founders' behavior, but interestingly, not only in one direction. Indeed, when the weather gets rough, so that the headcount becomes flat or even shrinks, showing that the company is somewhat struggling, the founder churn decreases by 7 percentage points.
Because that's what heroes do.
This suggests that the captain is the last to leave the ship and that founders stay on to fix or pivot, while when growth rockets, they behave like this.
My planet needs me.
Yeah, I'm proud of that one. So we've been through fundraising events, founders profile, market events, and team development, and we're yet to uncover the third best and overall best indicators of a founder on the way out. And what's left for that?
Corporate stuff, big.
Yeah, exactly. Board structure. So we've already touched on the third best predictor with simply the first outside board seat, which is, on my typical sequence formula, a board member gets appointed, then a COO and or CFO gets hired, the founding CEO hands off his role, a new growth round closes, and the founder exits. In layman terms, the board recruits a grown-up cohort, lets them settle, and then hands them the keys. So there we have our number 3 in the top, but also one that was expected, right? Hence I asked myself, beyond the presence of someone on the board, what specificities of that profile could even increase the risk of a founder quitting? Can you guess?
Courtesy demands you speak first.
Okay, I'll do. Well, that's the presence of at least one corporate player on the board, which increases the odds of a founder's departure by 11 percentage points. And then, if we're even more specific, a corporate player from an adjacent industry, chem, mining, food and beverage, you name it, raises those odds again by 14 percentage points. My explanation here would be that strategic board members appear to overall push the company's trajectory towards their own pain points, which might sometimes clash with the founder's vision. And then specifically for the adjacent industry corporates, well, if they expect water timelines to align with what they know best, it might be a source of tension and pressure on the founders to execute, potentially pushing them out. So there we have it. Our strongest predictor for a founder quitting is the addition of a strategic or corporate seat on the board. Maybe think twice before appointing that Coca-Cola, Mezzo, or Rio Tinto executive. But once I've said all that, with a dataset spanning over more than 2 decades, I also tried to evaluate what seems hardwired versus what's a moving target in our sector. And there are interesting evolutions. For instance, the more equity money leading to more founder churn is true across the board. Yes, but as rounds were on average steeper steps in the first half of my timeline compared to the latest years, that churn was also higher through, I'd guess, harsher dilutions. The headcount growth factor also has much more power and importance in recent years than it had 15 years ago, as my dataset shows, because I would think that growth trajectories were not as aggressive by then as they are today, where companies try to apply some of tech's playbook to water tech. Overall, what emerges from that timeline comparison is that the drivers I just presented you show an always steeper influence on founders' departure as time progresses. So if trends keep evolving in the same direction, the triggers I shared with you today will be even stronger predictors of founders' fate in the future than they are today. And if investors really believe that founders and team are such an important factor when it comes to investment decisions, maybe they should pay attention to what growth trajectories they expect from their portfolio companies, who they strongly advise to add to the team, and who they appoint to the board. Now, digging that out was a hell of a work. It comes to you entirely for free, so if you enjoyed it, I read and answer every single comment, so let's discuss down there. It honestly helps showing the algorithm that you enjoyed it. And if you have no thoughts to share, at least hit the like button. Thanks a ton. And while you consider watching my book club episode on the dynamics of water innovation, let me thank my second sponsor, Bluefoot Membranes. Have you ever heard of a membrane that refuses to break? It sounds uncommon, but it's true. Meet Bluefoot Membranes, a Belgian company that has developed the first and only unbreakable membrane specifically designed for MBR. If you're new here, membrane bioreactor applications. This technology is setting a new standard in wastewater treatment. Water engineers and industry experts have tested this membrane, and no matter how much they pull and twist, the membrane holds strong. Now, it's not just about membranes, it's also about an award-winning and passionate team that doesn't take impossible as an answer. The people at Bluefoot Membranes are driven by a mission to make wastewater reuse the new standard, united by a shared purpose to leave a blue footprint on the world. So yes, they manufacture cool membranes, but they also push the boundaries of what's possible in MBR technology. To learn more about them, check the link to their website in the description. A big thanks to Bluefoot Membranes for sponsoring this episode, and I'll see you next time.